and welcome back to another episode of Patriarchy Principles, the podcast where we explore the intersection of faith, family, and leadership in today's complex, wild, and crazy world. I'm your host, Jay, and today I have a very fascinating guest, a unique guest who brings a unique blend of humor, critical thinking, imagine that, people still do that, and patriotism to the table. Joining me is Erin, a wife, mom, co-host of the Patriot Paranormal Podcast. She describes herself as a comedic conspiracy theorist. So Erin uses her humor and insight to encourage families to question the narratives presented to them and to break free from societal norms that may not serve them, which is most of the societal norms that you may be subject to. She's passionate about raising patriots. She's raised a couple, raising one, or a couple. I'm not sure how many total, but we'll get there. And addressing what she refers to as soul sicknesses. We were talking a little bit pre-show about that, so I'm really excited to talk more about the soul sicknesses affecting our society and possibly affecting you and your family today. In today's episode, we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive into what it means to raise patriots in modern times, so today's world, the landscape that is 2024, discuss the importance of always questioning the narrative, and explore how families can break free from systems that don't align with their values. So, without further ado, Erin, welcome to the show.
What an intro. That was so cool. It's like pretty much covered everything. I absolutely love to talk about in like one breath. Like that's phenomenal.
Hey, I tried my best, and you know, I think a good intro is important. I've worked really hard on my intros over time. Where I used to just jump right in, I would do an ad spot, but then I stopped doing ad spots like altogether in the beginning, and I don't really do them at all anymore. Especially on this platform, Patriarchy Principles. The only thing I'll really shout out is just the opening beat that you heard from the Podbeat app. You can turn any podcast into a musical experience with the Podbeat app. But we're gonna jump right in, and we're talking a little bit about pre-show about soul sicknesses and whatnot. And so I wanted to read a few verses here from the Bible, that good word, about the world, right? Because those soul sicknesses, and we're also going to talk a bit about, trying to break free of some of the norms of the world. So probably one of my favorites in this is Romans 12:2. So this is from the ESV version. They all say pretty much the same thing, but ESV is one I got pulled up right now. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Another one here, 1 John 2:15. Do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. And then lastly, that's a bigger passage. There's so many good ones. There's literally 57 verses I could do here. There's so many amazing verses about not being part of the world, be in the world but not of the world. A quote from I don't even know what scriptures. Colossians 3:2. Set your minds on things that are above, not the things that are on earth. So, for you, Erin, when it comes to raising patriots and helping family break free from the system, what have you done personally to raise patriots, raise good human beings? Because to me, raising patriots is just raising good human beings, just raising good, kind, respectful, tolerant, accepting people. I feel like people hear patriots and they get very confused by that. They think it's some white supremacy kind of bullshit and all up in that. So how do you raise patriots? How have you broken free from the system, broken free from the societal norms, and gone about that a little bit?
Well, there's so many things you can break down into that one thing. Because first of all, it's like each family has their own different norm. You know what I mean? And when you say raise patriots, it's like I don't really feel that. How can I explain this? Like, obviously, we want to be patriotic to our country. Yeah, but as far as like raising my kids, it's more just raising them right. And when I say right, I mean just with some moral values. Just like you said, being a good person. But there's so much more to it than that, because when with kids, oh God, like I said, I'm trying to explain this in a way that doesn't, I'm not really worried about offending people, but there is so many different.
Please do. That's what this platform's all about, right? Patriarchy Principles. We're here to disrupt. We're here to cause some noise, make some noise, and to go against the grain a little
Absolutely.
bit. I mean, we started off reading the Bible a little bit, so we're already, pissing people off by talking about faith in God.
Definitely.
So the people who are offended are already offended. So I mean, if they're still here,
Yeah,
great. They can keep getting
that's
offended,
true.
honestly. So
I think one for me the biggest thing is just having that moral compass in children, because when you're teaching children, there is definitely a right from wrong. There's a truth, and this is really important for parents, is truth. If your kid comes home and they're singing, and like 10 people have told him that they sing really good but they actually suck, you don't want to be that person that, you've seen those when they go on to, what's that show that used to come on all the time, the X Factor or whatever, and they'd
oh,
go on and they
American
were just
Idol or
horrific. Yeah, that one. And they're
yeah,
horrific, but yet they have this delusion that they were so good. And so then when they're told the truth, they're crushed. And so for me, that's a huge part of raising a patriot, a true, American patriot is truth, reality, because not everybody wins in everything. To give every freaking child a trophy is just wrong in my book.
I
Because
agree.
their life is full of trials and tribulations. It's just not all smooth sailing, and you need to know how to be able to deal with that. And
Yeah,
if you're being lied to constantly and you're not living in a reality, which so many children are in that situation now, that when a truth comes at them, they just don't know how to handle it. And then you get these screaming lunatics, who think they have a right to turn around and treat people, the way that they're treating it. It's like with the whole mask thing, for instance, and I refuse to wear one. I'm not wearing one. And I've got these people that I don't know coming up to me and telling me what a horrible person I am. I'm like, who in the fuck, excuse my language, are you to walk up to a complete stranger and tell me that I'm in the wrong because I refuse to do something that goes against every fiber, great. It
yeah.
just was
It,
not in my being to do that. I'm not going to comply, and I disagree with it, and I think you're wrong, but I'm not going to sit there and tell them all this right
mhm.
then and there, because, I'm not going to argue with a lunatic. But if these people had had any semblance of truth and reality in their life, then they wouldn't treat a human being the way that. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I know
Is
exactly what you're
that
saying, and
making sense, or
it's
do I sound crazy?
no, you make total sense, and it's there's so much irony in truth, right? There's so much
Mhm.
irony in that, especially when we look at like the political landscape, right? Because
Right,
within the span of 48 hours, George Lopez at a Democratic rally made a joke about Mexicans stealing the border wall supplies at a Democratic
right.
rally, right? 24
Mhm.
hours later, within a 24 to 48 hour span, right? Tony Hinchcliffe roasts everybody there at that rally. Everybody. He
Right,
roasted Jews, he roasted blacks,
right.
he roasted Puerto Ricans. Very similar to when
Mhm.
he was at the Tom Brady
Mhm.
rally. He roasted Gronk, he roasted Kevin Hart. He called
Right,
Kevin Hart a slave, said if Kevin Hart was to go pick cotton, he would be deadlifting, um, kind of thing, right? And so then he did the same thing at
right. The Trump rally.
the
Mhm.
Trump rally at MSG, and dude has the number one live podcast in the world, the number one like comedy thing of Kill Tony,
Right,
to where you have to come up and
right.
you have to kill, and he bombed on a lot of his jokes. A lot of
Mhm.
his jokes bombed. But then there's this outrage about Puerto Rico
Right,
being an island of
right,
garbage when I saw videos today. Today is October 29th. I saw videos today talking about how yeah, there is a garbage problem in Puerto Rico. There literally is a garbage problem, and now people are talking about
right.
it, and now there's awareness to it. The senator of Puerto Rico, the U.S. senator of Puerto Rico, because I'm pretty sure Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, right? Uh,
Yeah, I think
and
so.
so the senator of Puerto Rico, the like annex kind of adjunct senator there, came out today and endorsed Trump. Like
Right,
so, and then there's this
right.
huge Trump train in Puerto Rico, and it's just like it doesn't make sense. Like there's so much irony in it, right? And then especially what you said about the math, like it's it's everywhere. It's like, well, you're a liar for saying I'm a liar because your candidate lies about everything. It's like, well, no, he just
Right.
has a really weird way of telling things and talking about things that make you have to think and make you have to research. And then through that, you
Hmm.
research and you learn and you find the truth of what he's saying, and
Right.
it's all there. And he's not really telling any lies along the way. And it makes a lot of sense when you actually break it down and you look at it and you critically think, which isn't really there either. But truth is a funny thing. When
Right.
someone knows the truth, they
But
want to deny the truth.
right. But it's like, had these people been told the truth as children, then maybe they'd be able to, grasp it a little bit better as adults, and not get so butthurt over simple comments or simple jokes.
Mm-hmm.
I always say to people, if that truly offends you, you would not have survived like the 80s and 90s. Like, have you
Yeah,
ever seen
got
In
some work to
Living
do.
Color? Do you remember In Living Color? That was like
Mm-mm.
so not, oh my God, you have to go watch it. So not politically correct, like at all whatsoever. But we grew up watching that crap. And it was so damn funny. Now, if you played that now, oh my God, they'd lose their minds. But you
True.
can't say that. You can't do, and it's like, oh, give me a break. And there's also a comedy, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, and it's called Little Britain.
I've heard of it.
And oh my God, you want to talk about funny. Now, also incredibly politically incorrect. But it just, jokes about all this stuff, but it back then, anyways, it wasn't considered offensive. Now they probably scrub the internet out of it. But
Absolutely.
you have to be able to have that kind of, I think it's a rational mind when you're able to
Mm-hmm.
logically filter through stuff and say, okay, well, maybe I find that offensive, but it's not, you know it's not a big deal. It's not going to affect my, you know what I mean. And kids
Yeah.
need to be able to do that. When they started handing out trophies to everybody and stopped giving spanks on the butt to children, it was a rapid decline at that point. And now it's like this horrific entitlement of, they just have these expectations, and yet this is such a shitty country, yet you all have these $1,000 phones and can go to Starbucks every day, but it's just so horrible. And it's like,
Yeah. Terrible.
what
Terrible.
in your mind is
What makes this
horrible then? And
terrible?
this is where the truth does not come in for these people. They don't understand. And then I was watching this documentary last night, which you might find this fascinating, because it really kind of hit home, that whole thing for me is this country's in a huge memory hole. It's like we've gotten so far out of, all these people that were in the war are pretty much dead now. And so there's not these living
Mm-hmm.
people to tell these stories of this horrific things that this country went through. And so it's like everybody's forgotten of what it's really like to live in really, really bad times. And they think that this is a bad time. I'm like, you don't have to grow your own food. You don't have to milk your own cows. You don't have to, carry your shit 4 blocks out. You know what I mean? It's just mind-boggling to me, the lack of appreciation and the lack of gratefulness, that people should have, but we don't. And so again, that takes me, I think, back to the whole truth, of we're just going to skim past all this stuff, and listen to MSM pretend it's just the worst country on the earth. And I'm like, oh
Oh
my
my gosh.
God,
MSNBC stunt with the Hitler
they're
comparison was
so,
that was so bad though. But it was, I think I put it on Twitter. But then you also want to say that's horrible. But what about President Biden today, literally saying that he wants to take Trump out for a swim in Puerto Rico, and implying that he would
my
drown
God.
him, and then saying that whoever supports Trump is garbage behind the
Right.
presidential seal on the podium.
Yeah. The rhetoric is just, it's
It's so
unbelievable.
bad.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then, when bad things happen, they're like, oh God, that's, don't do that. That's awful. And we're like, you're the ones that incited this.
Yeah, and then they don't like
Yeah.
Trump because Trump tells the truth, and then they don't like Elon because Elon lets the truth be told. Um, and then the
Yeah.
MSNBC thing was that was freaking awful. That was
You
so
know,
bad.
they're sitting there calling him Hitler. I mean,
No,
seriously?
they called him Hitler, um,
Yeah.
and it
That's
was
that to me is so repulsive.
yeah. And
That
then
is
there's so much more going on too. Like that's like not
mm,
truthful. On top of that, to where it comes to ballot boxes here in Washington. I live
oh
in Washington, but ballot
gosh.
boxes down in Vancouver getting set on fire.
Mhm.
Arizona,
Mhm.
Portland.
Right.
There's videos upon videos pouring out from Pennsylvania today of them cutting off voter lines at 2
Yeah.
p.m.
Yeah.
Why are we just ignoring this? Okay, so I
That's
found this.
report.
Let me see. I'm
Right.
gonna pull this up real quick because I have the MSNBC thing that we're bringing up, and it really bothered me because I have friends who are Jewish, many that I've talked to on the podcast. A few weeks ago, if you remember, Rena, she came on the podcast. If you were listening there, then she's Jewish, and we talked a little bit about that and whatnot. And it's just crazy. I don't know if the volume's gonna work, but it should.
Okay.
Come on, don't do this. Don't
After
do this.
pro-Nazi rally, really? Oh my
In that
God.
Hold on, we'll let this buffer and play.
Right.
But this is
That's so disgusting.
MSNBC, mainstream, nothing but crap.
Adolf
All right, well that's not working. But if you haven't seen it, you see it. You can go look over it over on X and find it on my account.
Mhm.
I think it's important. But you know where Kamala held her closing remarks today?
Huh.
She held her closing remarks in the same spot that in 1924 there was a KKK rally.
Oh my gosh. But you won't hear about that though. You know,
No,
it's
and I
so
posted all these parallels. I had some really long posts that I put on X. I'll have to find them here, but we'll come back to that. But if we just look at
mm,
the Bible, you know, John
yeah.
14:6, Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John 8:32, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 16:13,
Mm,
when the Spirit of the truth comes, he will guide you into all truth, for he will not speak on his own authority, but whatever he hears will speak, and he will declare to you the things that are to come. John 17:17, sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. John 4:24, God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. 2 Timothy 2:15, do your best to present yourself as God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightfully handling the word of truth. There's hundreds of
yeah.
verses about truth in the Bible.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And and that's like we were talking about earlier, is just such a key role in the raising of children nowadays, to
Mhm.
become wholesome adults is to let them be in the truth even when it's not fun and not comfortable. And because otherwise, yeah, we're just getting this whole mindset of, of nobody being able to handle any truth. And when it comes at them, as you see the meltdowns, you see the freaking out, you see the screaming at total strangers, and,
You see
and
women
that's
screaming at
unhinged.
toddlers and strollers.
Right. And that is unhinged behavior. That is just not normal. So it's like, what
Mhm.
psychosis has taken over people for them? And this is what we were talking about, in the pre-show, about that soul sickness that has taken over this country, and we could go down so many rabbit holes with this, but one of the big things for
Mhm.
me, and this might upset people, don't really care, is the fact that there's so many people who have turned away from God. You know, um, I see that uh, everywhere. And it's not to say that everybody has, obviously, but there's so many people that don't anymore. And then if you talk about God, like they give you this look, like, it's weird. It's a very strange time, because when I was younger, it's not like we sat around and talked about God all the time, but it was just like something you could easily approach and talk about. And
Yeah.
now it's almost like you get a weird look, if you bring it up, and it's frightening to me. It's just frightening because a lost society is not an honest society, and a
Mhm.
not honest society is a broken down society. And I feel like we are just fracturing as the days go by, and it's like, how do we get that back? How
Yeah.
how do we get the return? Because this nation was founded on God fearing people, for a
Mhm.
God fearing nation, and we are not that right now. And so, and not to say there's so many people that I know and that I love, and I surround myself with those kinds of people. That's the people I choose to be around in my life. But there's a lot of people that aren't like that. It doesn't
Yeah.
say I don't love them. Of course I do. But
Absolutely.
it's yeah, yeah. Sorry,
No, you're good. You're
I'm
good.
trying to make
And
sense.
no, it makes sense because the problem that happened was we, as a society, we stopped talking about three things, I believe, and that's how we got here. We stopped talking about politics, so
Yeah.
we all became a lot of people became uninformed, which was on purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Fully believe that was on
Mhm.
purpose, so that
Mhm.
people would have less information and believe
Yep.
what they were told. We
Yep.
stopped talking about religion, so God got taken
Mhm.
out of homes, out of
Out of
day-to-day conversation,
schools.
out of schools,
Out of schools.
and we
Yeah.
stopped talking about we stopped talking about identity and gender and things like that.
Mhm.
And then you compound it with handing out participation trophies, and
Yep. Yeah.
the most ironic thing here is I think he's one of the greatest of all time, Eminem, but literally saying, rapping about all the wokeness and everything like that, and all his albums,
Mm.
and he comes out and supports Kamala.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that a little weird? Why? Why?
Well,
Usher?
yeah. Now that could take me down my conspiracy hole like very easily because
Yeah, no, we'll get there because I
yeah.
think Tony Hinchcliffe hit it right on the head with one
Yeah.
of his jokes.
Yeah.
You know, but we look at this. Our nation's really come a long ways away from
Mm. Yeah.
how where it was set up. Psalm 33:12
Yeah.
through
Absolutely.
22. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom He has.
Mhm.
Um, whom He has. Why is this cut off? But blessed are the people who whose nations under God the Lord, chosen as heritage. The Lord looks down from heaven. He sees the children of man where He sits enthroned. He looks out on the earth and observes their deeds. The king is not saved by his great army. A warrior is not delivered by his great strength, but only through God. And so, there's some really
Yeah.
powerful passages in the Bible about patriotism, even.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Acts 5:29, I think, is a great example here. But Peter and the apostles answer, "We must obey God rather than men." And
Mm.
when we see presidential candidates named Kamala Harris saying that Trump's going to put people in camp if we don't elect her,
Mm.
again, another Hitler comparison, just a gentle
Yeah.
tone. President Biden calling 80 million plus Americans, probably 100,
Mm.
120 million Americans, garbage today.
Yeah. Mm.
Wake the fuck up. Wake the fuck
I
up.
know.
Come on. Like
I know. And
AOC
that.
and Mike Pence playing a fake game of Madden. The
Mm.
campaign trying to release a freaking Fortnite map, and come on.
Yeah. Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, when you said that, that it was taken out of homes, it was taken out of, people talking about it. Not only did they do that, which is just absolutely like, I mean, that is just such a travesty. Um, but they also stopped teaching, you know, what is it, civil economics, did it used to be called back in the day? I'm trying to remember. God, I was in
I
school
think
so
just
long ago.
civics.
Yeah, and so basically, they taught the Constitution. They taught your rights. The little paragraph they teach you nowadays about the Constitution is just so ridiculous that it's like you don't know anything. So if you take that out with all the other stuff and then the conformity of school itself, and you're not learning any life skills, you're just learning this repetition of stuff. And so it just makes for a very dull education, if that makes sense. I'm not saying people are dumb, I'm just saying they don't know all the stuff that they used to know. So how
Mm-hmm.
can you protect the Constitution and protect your rights if you don't know what they are?
If you don't know
You
what their
know,
rights are, yeah. No, I
how
agree.
can you turn to God and ask him, for to lead you if you don't know who he is?
Hmm.
So all these things that they've removed and taken away from, it's basically taken life away. I mean, it's just making these little robots, if you like, and like you say, they just kind of all, yes, to MSNBC, Trump bad, you know, must vote
Yeah,
for
it's all just
women. It,
it's
it
all just a
just
bunch of bullshit,
it really is. It really
and
is. And that's just scratching the surface of
barely,
the,
yeah.
oh my gosh. Because we could go on for weeks talking about this stuff. I'm just
Oh,
trying to kind of
absolutely.
layer the very first part of what you had, the question that you'd asked.
Absolutely.
Sorry, like 10 minutes
Absolutely.
ago, because
No,
I do take a long time to get around a question.
no, you're good. No, and I think it's important. And we're just here to have a conversation today, right? We don't have to stay on track. We
Oh,
can get off the rails. It's
absolutely.
completely fine.
Yeah.
But it's so important, right? It's why we still have really big problems with racism. That's why we see so much hate
Mm,
towards Jews, and so much
right.
blind following of these
Right.
Gen Z kids who are out there
Mm,
just blindly following, like, oh
right.
yeah, from the river to the sea till Palestine will be free. You guys are calling
Right.
for genocide. No, you are actually. And you
Right.
see all these kids and all these young people just incredibly confused about their identities and whatnot because they have no identity.
Yes.
Because it really goes back to what you said. I think that's a great foundational piece here, is that they don't know any truth, right? Because they were never told the
Right.
truth. They were told
Right.
all the different things to confuse them more. But I'm straight up
Hmm.
with my daughters. I'll straight up tell them I've been working. I have a 7-year old. My oldest child's 7, and I don't think I ever had a question growing up for myself, like about, okay,
Mm,
there's boys and there's girls, like that's it.
right.
Let alone when I was 7, have to be told that. But I have to tell my 7-year
Right.
old, which is not a place that I ever imagined myself being as a father, having to tell
No.
my 7-year
No.
old that there's boys and
Right.
there's girls. Girls have vaginas, boys have penises. That's it. There's nothing else. If someone tries to say, well, I identify as they, I've told her, keep asking. And yes, you may say that's, unsupportive or, whatever. No, it's not. It's biology, right? What are you?
Right.
Are you a boy or are you a girl? I'm a them. Are you a boy or are you a girl? I'm a them. No, you're 9. Are you a boy or are you a girl? Kind of thing,
Right.
right?
But I
And
mean,
there's so
at
much
9,
confusion. Like there's little 6-year-old
right.
boys who are fucking drag queens and that do drag
Right.
competitions. Like, what the fuck? Like,
But
how are you as a
yeah,
parent and the
God.
mother and a father okay with that? Like, that's disgusting.
Yeah.
To me, that's disgusting because a
Yeah.
5, 6-year-old little boy has no concept of that. He thinks he's just playing fancy dress up, right? You are
Yeah.
damaging his brain. You're not creating the right
Right.
brainwave.
And
And so when we
and
don't teach our
see,
kids the truth,
yeah.
they don't never get those brainwaves. They
And
never get
that
those right brainwaves.
and that to me is like pretty infuriating because it is, and I by no means was the perfect parent at all, but you do know right from wrong, and these parents definitely have some kind of sickness going on, soul sickness going on, because to do that to your child, I'm sorry, they you are putting them in such a precarious situation. You should know better. The child absolutely does not know. They don't have a clue what's going on, and so they are not making that decision. You are, you know and so I do put that on solely on the parents' heads.
Absolutely.
I have a friend, and his son, I like maybe 2 years old, 3 years old, like, you knew that child was gay. I mean, I'm sorry. It was just, you knew. Like, we all knew, and it was very obvious.
Hmm.
It just was what it was. And, nobody, how can I say this, the right way? Nobody, like, freaked out. Nobody was upset or this or crazy or anything. We just let the child be the child. And,
Yeah.
my friend, he said, it's I cannot smack this out of my kid, and I'm not going to. My
Hmm.
kid has to be who he is. And anyways, that was the most unique experience I've ever like kind of experience in that sense, because it's like right then and there you sort of knew where that child, where his head was, if that makes sense. But other
Hmm.
children around, who started acting that way, you're like, no, that's not who you are. You know what I'm Yeah, I'm trying to say this in a
Yeah.
very sensitive manner. So
Yeah.
basically, you just
You
knew.
don't, and you don't have to if you don't,
And
if you,
yeah, I just, and I don't care about hurting people's feelings, because people need to grow the fuck up, right? It's just that there's a right way to say things, and I try to, be kind,
I
basically,
got you,
because
100%. No, and that's
right,
important.
because I'm not an asshole. I don't want to just walk
Yeah.
around and be like, I don't give a shit what you think. This is, no, I don't want to be that way.
Hmm.
So I try to be loving and sensitive, to everybody.
Definitely.
And so that's the only reason why I say that to you is
Got
I'm
you.
trying to be sensitive. Is just because I don't intentionally walk around just hurting people's feelings. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't
But
try to.
the truth
Sometimes I
is the
do though.
truth. This kid, like, it was just what it was. I'm like, and there was no change in that child's demeanor, and but that was a natural thing. Like, and I know, like, being a man of God, that's probably not what you're thinking, but you could not change this kid in the way he was.
No,
And
and there's no reason to try to change people in that aspect, right? Like if
right,
that's who they are, that's who they are. That's fine.
right,
That's
right,
fine. We all have
but
our different beliefs. Like it doesn't, like them
right,
doing that and that boy and that man now being that man, it's fine. Like it
right,
doesn't affect me at all. Like I
right.
don't
But the
give a shit.
parent didn't isn't you know what I'm saying? The parent wasn't like, you're not gonna act this way. Psh, psh, psh. The parent was like, I'm just gonna have to let my child be who they are,
Yeah, you just gotta let them be who
and
they
was
are, and
loving,
you just gotta kind of
supportive,
peel back, and you can still teach them like the same values. You can still teach them
right.
great values. You can still teach them to be great,
Yeah,
country loving, America first patriots.
exactly. But his lovingness towards his child was what got me, is how truthful he was about it, to himself, to everybody
Hmm.
else, and then to the kid. And that is what I'm talking about, because then you
Yeah.
get some parent who has a 6-year-old who's saying, I'm, without any signs previously. Like I said, this kid, that's just how he was, from the time he could walk and talk. But for 6 years old to turn around and say, I'm now a boy or whatever, and the parents like, yes, okay, good, we're gonna do all this. That's not truthful. That's not right. There's something wrong there that needs to be talked about.
Talked about, right? And
And
we don't talk about it, and parents just don't talk about it. It's
right,
just like, okay, great, let's go,
right,
push your peen in and get you on hormones at 6, 7 years old,
right.
kind of thing.
Because
It's
if
like,
you say anything, then you're the bigot. There's something wrong with you. You're the homophobe or whatever. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, I literally, you can do what you want, but don't, for a child, you've got to let them grow into whatever they're going to grow into. You can't
yeah,
force it on them. And then I wanted to be a freaking movie star at 9 years old. I'm like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to be a famous
yeah,
movie star. Okay. You know what I mean? And it's like, my parents weren't like, yes, you are. We're gonna
yeah.
we're gonna take you out and put you on this and tell you how wonderful you are. No, they were like,
Mhm.
okay, go back and do your chores.
Right. Like
Reality.
that's great. Good for you. That's awesome. Like chase that dream. Do what you got to do. Become what you got to become to do that. If that's what you want to become. But you have to let kids be kids, right? Like you have to let them kind of
Right.
figure it out. And it's your job as a parent. If they come, up to you, saying your little girl. If my little girl comes up to me, say, "Oh, I feel like a boy." It's
Right.
like, well, why do you feel like that? Because I'm pretty sure you're wearing a dress and a tutu right now, and you have makeup on your
Right.
face that tell me
Right.
otherwise, kind of
Right.
thing. Maybe you
Let's
like,
talk about it. Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about it. Maybe you like more boy things, so that doesn't make you a boy.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, when I changed your diapers when you were, 3 days old, you had a vagina, and I'm pretty sure you still have one, kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah,
no,
but we have
but
to have these conversations, and I'm
mhm,
not talking about with the kids, I'm talking about with the parents. The
yeah,
honest conversations with the parents, but people are so afraid to have these conversations anymore because of being labeled something that it's really detrimental in our
yeah,
society to not have these conversations. You
Yeah.
know, but that's like that with everything. I had a friend, I hate Trump. And I'm like, well, why? And then when she told me her reasons, I'm like, seriously? I'm like, do you know how many people I know who have those traits? But I don't disown them or hate them.
Yeah.
They're human. They're a person. People are not
Yeah.
flawless, because if we were, then we'd be infallible and we wouldn't need God, right? And it doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. And
Yeah.
so,
No, you're right. You're 100% right. And if we were perfect, we wouldn't need God. We wouldn't be here, right? If
mm-mm,
Adam hadn't
mm-mm,
fallen, we wouldn't be here. And the problem is that there, like you just said, like there's a label for everything. That's a big problem.
mm-hmm,
There's a
yeah,
word or a phrase for everyone and everything
yes,
that's some way,
oh my
shape, or
gosh,
form. It's like,
yeah,
why can't our kids just be kids? Why do they have to
mm,
fall into a category? Let them just be fucking
right.
kids. Like nobody, let
And
them just
if
be
they,
kids. Let them enjoy their
and if
childhood while
they,
they can.
right, but that's what's so frustrating though too, about trying to be loving and tolerant is just like what we were talking about. If they grow up to be that way, then so be it. They're still going to be loved. We're not going to push them out of society. That's not the goal here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you have a child who just is a child and not sure and confused, it's like, stop grooming them to be a certain way. That's not okay, and that's not truthful. That is not reality, and that is where I get frustrated. Is
Hmm.
because we're putting this incredible pressure on children to do something. How about just be a child? Just go play and just be home by dark, and don't
Yeah.
do
Just
this
don't
and don't
play,
do
get
that.
dirty.
But
Like don't worry about
right, but there's all
trying
these
to become a gay
pressures. And
man or something.
right. When did we stop letting kids be kids? It's just like, it's like these people that, and I'm bad for it. I wash my hands every 5 seconds, but that's not because of germs. That's just because I'm a weirdo like that, and I like to wash my hands every 5 seconds. But when my
That's
kids were
fun.
younger, like I'm like, go play in the mud, go and now it's like, if kids go play in the mud, they're like, oh my god, oh, they're gonna get dirty, they're gonna catch this, they're gonna catch. You're like, holy shit, these poor children. There's just so many restrictions and so many
Yeah.
things that like they're just not children anymore. And it's like, it's sad. To me, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's like, just let them play. I had the neighbor's kid. They were out walking, and I was out taking some pictures of my house. Well, because I got my Christmas lights up, and I haven't turned them on yet, by the way. But I wanted to get a picture because the guy put them up,
Okay.
wanted them for his portfolio, and they were walking by, and she comes running up, and she's telling me about this raccoon, and it's doing this, and it's going to scratch my eyes out, and we better run. I'm like, oh my God, well, we better run. And it was just the cutest thing. She was just being a kid. I'm like, what a silly story, but how fun. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And and her mom's just like, oh my gosh, yeah, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, for what? You know what I mean? Don't, no, this is awesome. This is fun. What a great imagination. And so I just
Exactly.
ran with it. We laughed, and then, yeah. So that's just a normal, natural child being a child. She just runs up to me telling me this wild story, and I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great imagination. That's what they should do. Don't apologize. And so,
Exactly.
yeah,
No, and that's exactly how
yeah,
kids should be, right? That's exactly how kids should be. You know, we
yeah.
and I want to pose this thought out there for the listeners that why do you have so many more restrictions on your child than the
Mm,
government has on the food that they allow your child to eat
mm,
in our country, right? Think about that.
mhm,
If you have more restrictions than the government has on the food and vaccines and stuff that you put in your child's body,
mm.
then maybe you should reevaluate that, or maybe we need to have a different conversation here, right? But kids 100% just need to be able to be free. They need to be able to have fun and run and play and get dirty and
Yes.
be crazy and wild and rip some pants and dirty some clothes and clothes wash. You can clean up a house.
Yeah.
All good things, right?
Yeah.
Um, but we gotta have these conversations, right? We gotta have the conversations. We gotta be able to talk about these things and encourage our children to be these things. And be truthful
Absolutely.
about it, right? Like just let them be fucking kids. Like don't We don't need to pressure them into being part of the
Right.
LGBTQ plus community because that's cool, right? They'll face enough of that pressure, later on in life. It's our job to prepare them to have those conversations and be able to
Yeah.
understand values and biology and two genders and all these different things, right? It's important to understand these things and attraction and things like that so that they can understand, okay, well, I have a pretty clear concept of this. This is what it is. And, it's up to parents to have those conversations, and we don't still have those conversations, and it's really sad and something that really needs to come back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is, kind of goes back to the conversation we kind of had earlier, and we mentioned the phrase a few times, but that soul sickness, right?
Mm.
A lot of parents their souls are sick, right? Like, especially, a lot of parents right now that are raising kids or Gen X that are, probably in their 50s, 60s, right? Finishing up raising their kids, or millennials who are just starting out raising their
Right.
kids, things like that, bringing up families. Gen Z, there's already, population crisis on our hands with how few kids Gen Z is having and whatnot. And that's a whole other conversation, right? But,
I know.
for my generation and whatnot, like millennials, like we grew up in this time to where we could play outside.
Yeah.
It was fine. And then 9/11 happened, and then Obama happened, and then it was all kind of just gone come about 2014-ish, towards the end of the Obama administration, those 8 years, to where everything just kind of changed to where kids weren't doing that anymore. It wasn't common for, like, me and my friends, we went out, it was fine, but then more and more it was like, okay, don't go out. 2015, 2016, Trump comes into office and things continue to change, and then more and more pandemic, bam, now everything's completely different. You don't go outside, you don't touch it, you don't go to the park, you don't go to the movies, you don't go nowhere, kind of thing. And so we're fed a bunch of bullshit growing up because we started to take history out of history books, and only certain things in history started to be taught. And parts of the Constitution were taught, but not the whole parts of the Constitution, to why one amendment affects the next amendment, to protect the next amendment, to protect the next amendment, when all the amendments essentially protect the First and Second Amendment. And then after that, those two protect everything else in the Constitution. And, we stopped learning all the ins and outs, the intricacies in my generation. That's kind of where it stopped. And now we see what that looks like with all these Gen Z kids who don't understand shit from Crayola and get their information from ChatGPT or from Google Gemini.
So I have a question then. So, because, we had that freedom, our generation, of being outside, and our parents saying, you better be home when the street lights come on. I mean, that was a long time. They didn't know where we were. We were just like gone and doing all kinds of stuff, right? And so do you think it was a safer time, or do you think it was just a little more hidden, that things, because we didn't have the internet back then? And so things were still going on. Obviously, things did still go on. But do you think it's just more prevalent now, or do you think it was just we didn't know about it so much?
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
If I was to look at this, like, historically, like, context speaking, like, right, like, let's look at news and look at media. And what do those two things try to do? They try to fearmonger, and they try to make certain things seem worse than they are, right? And they try to take one little comment and turn it out of context, but then they don't tell the whole story. So maybe, there was as much crime, but I truly believe there was less violent crime at that time because we didn't have as many violent offenders in the country, right? There was no need, because the violent offenders at that time could be locked up and put in mental institutions. They could be institutionalized. I'm sorry. They could be put in prison for longer periods of time.
Sentences as well.
Yeah, they could be sentenced to longer sentences in prison. They could be put to death for heinous crimes and whatnot.
They're just given a smack on the hand now.
Or they're just caught and released, and they get to go and rape and kill more women and children. I'm sorry I said that, but I said it because it's true. Take over apartment complexes and piss and eat house pets for dinner and whatnot. And there's videos out there. It happens. Eat birds, squirrels, whatever it may be, raccoons, possums. I don't know what they're
Yeah.
roasting, but they're roasting something that looks like an animal. So
Mm. Yeah, that's just so horrific. But and I'd ask that because it kind of goes back to the whole thing that I said, of as the time is going by, kind of more and more people are moving away from God. And I think that sort of falls in line with the timeline, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
mhm,
Of when you look at things were different. And I was like, okay, but if you want to look at both perspectives, maybe it was bad. We just didn't realize it. We didn't know about it. Okay. Well, I agree with what you're saying. I think that it was not as bad then. But then you look now and it's like, wow, it's like every other story is not even other of the story. Most stories now are fear mongering. It's terrifying. It's like you don't want to go. And so, how many kids play in the street like we used to? I
very
hardly see
few.
any kids in my neighborhood anymore running around without a parent. And that's fine, whatever. I agree with that because if I had a kid that age right now, I damn sure wouldn't let him. And that's horrifying because that's not how we should be
Yeah,
and but yeah, it's definitely not the same. You don't have parks full of children anymore, and and to me that's just so sad because again, it just it takes away that freedom of expression, of fun, and it just puts so much pressure, and I think it just kind of smashes down our soul a little bit.
it does. It absolutely does. So if we're looking at like violent crime rates over the last 50 years, I want to try to summarize this real quick. From the 70s through the early 90s, violent crime steadily increased. Contributing factors included
Mm,
economic challenges, population growth, urban areas. The rate of violent crime, including murder, robbery, and assault, peaked in the early 1990s. In the
wow,
90s, there
yeah.
was a crime drop. So starting in the mid 90s, there was a significant decrease in violent crime, which is, kind of why my generation, us millennials, we kind of got to take advantage of that. Um,
Right.
Improved policing strategies were a part of that.
Mm,
Increased incarceration rates, demographic shifts, economic improvement. Imagine that the
right.
economy gets better, you have better policing, and you fund the police, and you have better
Mm,
incarceration. Crime goes down.
imagine
Imagine
that.
that. The criminals don't want to commit crimes because they get harsher punishment. Technological advancements also helped in policing, and the expansion of community-based programs also
Right.
played a role. So we had more like the vigilantes and things like that, and people protecting their neighborhood, right, and just doing their due diligence to
Mm,
protect each other. We looked out for each other.
yeah.
2000,
Yeah.
2010, there was another decline with some stabilization. So crime rates continued to drop in the early 2000s, eventually stabilizing at a relatively low level compared to
Mm,
previous decades. Violent crime rates hit historic lows during this period. Economic stability and improvements in
mm,
law enforcement technology, as well as community and preventative policing efforts, helped sustain low rates. During the 2020s, however, it's been uptick. Since the COVID
mm,
19 pandemic, there was a notable rise in violent crime in certain areas. Uptick
right.
include economic stress, reduced social services, pandemic related disruptions in commuting and policing structures.
Wow.
Also add that defund the police, things like that took over social media.
Yep.
But the crime rates during this time also were below the peak in the early 90s. So the peak in the early 90s per 100,000 people were violent crime rates of 758.2 per
Mm,
100,000. 2014 actually saw the lowest in recent years at violent crime per 361.6, but that's toward the end of the
interesting.
Obama administration post the recession and going into Trump's presidency. So that
Mm,
continued to decline, and then it rose again in 2020. And what happened in 2020? Uh,
mm,
Biden Harris rates saw an increase, but still were below the
mm.
peak. But I really don't believe these facts are 100%
No.
accurate. Um,
No.
I just pulled this off of ChatGPT. It tells me my sources, things like
Right.
that. But um,
Yeah, because didn't they just get caught fabricating their crime
yeah,
numbers?
yeah, and they
Yeah,
got
they
fact
just
checked
got
for it,
caught
and they came
lying.
out with it.
Yeah. And they were just completely, I mean, just skewed. And it's like you absolutely could not trust that. I'm like, there's no way what they're saying is truthful. Like everybody's seeing it everywhere, you know?
Yeah, it says it's down the first half of 2024, but it's hard to know according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which is
Right.
terrible. They do a lot of good work, but honestly, there's big flaws in all these government systems.
Right,
Big flaws.
right. Yeah,
So
they investigate themselves, so they're perfect. You know.
yeah, right. So,
I'm like,
but I think
yeah,
we were, we weren't as aware of it. It wasn't as fear mongered to us. Yes, bad shit happened. People still got raped. People still got
yeah,
murdered. Homes got broken into. All these things like
yeah.
that. But it didn't feel like it was as often or happening nearly as much because people just
No,
generally got along. When you're out, when your kids are just out in the street and everyone's home around a reasonable same time, right? And
right,
everyone's doing okay economically and socially,
right.
then you
But
get to
you
commingle with your neighbors a lot more, and you talk a
exactly.
lot more, and you hang out a lot more.
But not
And
only that, but you came home and you sat down at the dinner table together. You
mhm,
know, that was such a huge thing. Like it wasn't just me and my family, all my friends. They all did the same thing. You had to be home when the streetlights came on, you came home, you washed up, you sat down and dinner together. We all did that. Now, how many families do you know still sit down at a dinner table together every night? Because I don't know
it's
very many at all.
well, we
I
don't
mean,
even
I
have
actually
families. We don't even have like every family looks a
no,
little bit different, but we don't have the nuclear family anymore, right? Like the
no,
nuclear family has been completely abolished.
it has.
Um, by
Yeah,
primarily the left and through the welfare and the nanny state has been primarily abolished
right.
through
And
since Lyndon B. Johnson was in office.
yeah, and then we could. I mean, we could go even further than that. But this, you know, equal rights. I'm going to make as much money as you. I don't care that you're a man, and it's like, I can get screamed at by all the women in the world over here, but I'm sorry, I just don't agree with that. I don't agree with that feminism movement. I don't think we should be, ball and chain in the kitchen and pregnant. That's not what I'm saying. But I do agree that, the men are supposed to be our protectors. They're supposed to be the hunter and gatherers. They are, the they're the guy in the family. That's their role. That's the way it's
Hmm.
meant to be. And not to say that women can't go to work and we can't make good money and all this stuff, but it
Absolutely can.
really, absolutely, there's a way to do it. But I believe that that movement was brought in to break up the nuclear family, to
Absolutely.
get an extra tax bracket going,
Absolutely.
and to put in women's minds that they don't need a man, and they're just a byproduct, and
Yeah.
we can do this, we don't need you. And I disagree with that. Now, is that with everybody? Absolutely not. But that's a huge, huge problem in our society now. And I even went through that phase for a little while there. I don't need no man. I don't know. And I'm like, I wish I knew then what I know now, because
Hmm.
I would never have behaved that way, because I realized that I was wrong. you know,
Yeah.
I was totally wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not healthy for the family to be broken up the way we are. And it's certainly not healthy for mom and dad to be out working their butts off, 60 hours a week, while these kids are just in school or at some other, childcare, not being taken care of by the parents because they have to work so hard to pay for stuff we can't even afford. That's unfair. It's not
Yeah.
right.
It
And
doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all.
another part of our broken system of families having to work to death just to get by and barely scraping by. And then we're not raising our children. We're farming them off to school or wherever because we have no option but to go to work, both parents. And that's not right either, you
No.
know.
And when you take a father and a mother out of the home with the child,
Mm,
that's where you have issues, right? You take the fathers out of the
mm,
home. When you look
yeah,
back in 1920s, 30s,
yeah,
40s, 50s, right? You look back at the Little House on the Prairie times, and
right, right.
what's depicted in that is a perfect example of this. I heard this or read this in the book Point Man, which is a great novel, by the way. I highly recommend it, especially on this show. I would love the author of that show to come on this one, our book to come on this one. But basically, what would happen is the father would or the kids would stay at home until they were about
Pardon me.
7, 8 years old, right? 6, 7, 8 years old, right? With the
Hmm.
mother while the father's out working, field, whatever he was doing, right?
Right.
And then once the children became about 7, 8 years old, then they would split off, right? The girls would stay with the mother, and they would learn,
Hmm.
whatever trade that they learned, sewing or cooking or cleaning
Right.
and homemaking and things like that. They learned all those things, the practical skills, right? Balancing the
Okay.
checkbook, things like that. They learned how to do all those things. And then the boys would go off to work with their fathers. And they would go work. They would work side by side with them for the next 10 years until they're 18, 20 years old, right? So the next 10 to 12 years of working side
Okay.
by side with their father, sun up to sundown, constantly together, learning, growing, developing, understanding, learning the
Right.
work, learning the ins and outs and the oddities. But let's say dad's a farmer. Son doesn't want to be a farmer. Son wants to go be a
Hmm.
blacksmith. Dad would
Right.
say, okay, no problem. I'm going to find you the best blacksmith we have in town here. You're going to go apprentice under him, and I'm going to join you during your apprenticeship, and we're going to do this together. If you're learning it, I'm learning it. We're going to do it together. And that's how it worked. And then if that
Hmm.
blacksmith son wanted to go and be a farmer,
Right.
and Joe and Billy knew each other, they would,
Right.
do the same thing. It's like, okay, well,
Right.
we're going to apprentice over here today, over at the blacksmith, and then tomorrow we're going to apprentice over at the farm, or we're going to spend
Right.
half here, kind of thing, and we're going to make it work
Yeah. Right.
because that's what
Right.
made sense. But then you start to introduce school, and then you start to take
Hmm.
fathers out of the pictures more because fathers have to go and work more.
Hmm.
You put the kids in school with women,
Right.
and they're getting nurtured, but they're not getting that. They're not experiencing nature, and so they're
Right.
being taught by women, all these things and emotions, things like that, and it's all just
Right.
spiraled into
But
what we see today.
right. And then you look at a school nowadays. It's like a jail. It's a brick building with just minimum windows in this block room, you know, being told what to do, and you're going to follow the rules, and this is the way it is, or you're in trouble, and obey, obey, obey. You're just setting you up for that's what you're going to do, and there's no critical thinking. This is the
Mm.
way it is, and you're going to follow toe the line or you're in trouble. And it's just like there's no ability to nurture into who you're supposed to be. You're just going to be told what you're doing. And I'm not saying that teachers are just like, not letting kids express themselves. That's not what I mean. But, how could you possibly find who you are through such a conformative system of each child
Yeah.
has to do this, each child has to do that? Well, not each child is equal in that sense, because like I'm really smart in one area, but in another area, I'm like brick dumb. But if we're all having to follow the same thing, then you're already setting me up for a certain kind of failure because I can't do this and I can't do it on the level of these other children. And so, but I can do that, but I'm not allowed to go do that because I have to sit in here with everybody else and do the same exact thing. And so there's
Hmm.
no, you know what I mean? It's all just conform and obey instead of, okay, well, what are you good at and what can we do to accelerate that for you to to reach your maximum as a person and your maximum skill ability? You know what I'm saying? There's none of that,
Yeah.
and to me that's sad because I think that just dampens our spirituality. I think that dampens our what God intended for us to do and to be, and it does it that alone just wipes out, it just, yeah, it just wipes you out. It just drains
Yeah.
and I just, it's such a sad system that we're in right now,
Yeah.
because I see these other places that do these outside schools, and they still learn, they still do all that stuff, but they have all these amazing things outside, that teach these kids, growing food and farming and all this other stuff as part of the curriculum, and they're so much happier,
Yeah. Okay,
and they
that's how
have
we're
that
meant to be as
freedom.
human beings. That's how we should
Yeah.
be. We're not meant to
Yeah.
be, forced into a box all day and,
No.
then forced into a box, metaphorically speaking as well, right? And that's why I
Right.
love what, so many states, especially down in the South and the Sun Belt as well too, have school
Yeah.
choice programs, like full state school
Yes.
choice programs,
Yes.
which I think is a
Mhm.
beautiful thing. And I know that's something that
Right.
Trump wants to establish,
Yes.
nation
Yeah.
federally, because it absolutely
Yeah.
should be. As parents, we
Yeah.
should get to decide what kind of education our child gets and what
Right.
that education looks like. And we shouldn't be
Right.
penalized for that. Whether that
Exactly.
we want to homeschool them, great. Here's your money to homeschool your kid, so you can do that, right?
Exactly.
So
And
one parent can
yeah,
homeschool, one parent can go and work, kind of thing, right? That's completely
right,
fine. Here's the curriculum, minimum things you need to meet, go and do it, right? Or
right,
okay, you do want to do public school, great. That would then
right.
unburden, I'm gonna use a common term. It would
Hmm.
unburden, these school
Hmm.
teachers from,
Right,
having packed classrooms. It would allow them more time and ability to
right,
freely teach and to have fun. And
right,
then it would
right.
open up the doors for more higher levels of education. Okay, well, I want my kid to go to a charter or a private or something,
Hmm.
very strict and very by the book and, learn
Right.
at a high level and
Hmm.
test into that. Okay, great.
Right,
Here's your option for that
right,
private school that has this different set of values. Or I want my kids to go to a Christian school and go
right,
there and learn that. Great. Here's the tuition.
right.
Go and do that. That should be a choice for every single family, every
It,
single
it
parent
it
to make.
should. Yeah, because when these schools get incentivized by money rather than well-being of the child, it's like we've already lost the battle right there, you know.
Exactly.
And it's not that these teachers don't care. I'm not saying that they don't. It's just that the schools, it's like with the hospitals, they got incentivized for doing certain things certain ways during this pandemic and whatever they're doing now, and it caused horrific behavior and
Yeah.
things you wouldn't ever have dreamed that people in this country would or could do to their fellow citizens. And I experienced that firsthand numerous times through the hospital system. And I can assure you that unless I have a limb falling off, I will not go to the hospital because of the way that they treated me. Because I'm not putting a mask on. I'm just not doing it. You can go
Right.
fuck yourself right up the. Excuse me, Lord. I'm sorry. That was rude.
You're fine. And so no, it's so important, right? But you're so
But
right. All these things that we're talking about, right, suck the soul out of you, or they make your soul sick
mm-hmm.
because they dampen your creativity, they
Yeah,
dampen your
yeah,
spirit, they damper your curiosity, they damper you
right,
being able to learn and ask questions, and that's
right,
what makes the soul sick, right? When you can't ask why, when you can't learn about God, when you
right.
can't talk about God, when you can't talk about politics, when you can't talk about gender, when you
Exactly.
can't have your own values, you can't question other people's values, you can't have a friendly conversation and a friendly
Right.
debate. Back on
But it's
episode, what was it, 6 of this podcast, and this is going to be episode 8, but episode 6 of this podcast, when I sat down with Jason, we had he's on the left side of the aisle, I'm on the right side of the aisle. We had a long
mm,
form, almost 2 hour conversation just about all the different topics. I brought up things that are
right.
important to me. He brought up things that are important to him. I questioned him. He
Mm-hmm.
questioned me. We just had a conversation. Does that change about how we feel about each other at all? No. No.
Right.
Absolutely
Right.
not. But yet, there's also the
Exactly.
same people who will reply to me on X and say liar, and that's it. Or will
Right.
get in my DMs and say you're a terrible person. How dare how can you look your
Right.
kids in the face and tell them whatnot? Guess what? I literally was watching the Trump rally with my kid, and my daughter, my 3-year-old, came up to me. She's almost 4. By the time this comes out, she'll be 4. So 4-year-old came up to me. She said, "Who's that?" I'm like, "That's President Trump. He was the 45th president. He very well could be, and I hope and pray that he is the 47th president of the
Mm.
United States." And she was just like, that's amazing, kind of thing. She doesn't know. She's 3, but
Right.
she's like, she
Yeah.
wanted me to call him. Just wanted me to call him. Like I knew him. And then
Oh, that's so
um,
sweet.
she wanted me to ask him over for dinner.
Right.
I was like, "Do you
That's
think he
cool.
likes tacos?" She goes, "Yeah, him love tacos." And so,
Aw.
it was just the cutest thing. It was adorable.
Right.
And that's why can't we all be like that? Let's invite each other over for dinner and get to know each
I
other.
I
Invite
know.
each other into our homes, which is
I
fine.
know.
Like, let me get to know you. You get to know me. Let's exchange our values, things like that. We probably have a lot more in common than what we have different from each other, right? And that's
Yeah.
what heals
But
our soul, right?
But see, and that's the other problem too, though, is the demoralization that they have put on people through their lies and their rhetoric and all the BS, news. That also dampens our soul. You know what I mean? And when you see the truth and you know what is right and what is good, and all you see is this constant craziness, the constant drama, the constant lies, it is demoralizing. That also dampens the spirit, which is why a lot of times I have to step away and I'm like, oh my God, I just can't. I have to turn everything off and I just can't even look at the news.
Hmm.
I'm not very active on Facebook anymore at all. I go on there occasionally and tell people happy birthday and all that, but I stay away because it's just so toxic. And I get
Yeah.
banned every 5 minutes anyways. I'm like,
Oh yeah,
whatever.
and Meta's, Zuckerberg came out and said that he was censoring stuff from the 2020
Right.
election.
But
And it's
that's
like, okay, well,
demoralizing.
if that isn't a flip, what is?
I
You
know.
know? And yeah, but
But
that was talked about for what, a day?
right. Well,
And that
and
was
that's what
gone.
they do. The news cycle moves so fast, and that's another part of the demoralization
And they
process.
move it on
Is
purpose.
is yeah, they move it so fast that you don't have time to have emotions about it or talk about it or think about it, because then we're on to the next. It's like, Maui and Helene and all these things. These are major things that happen. People's lives are affected, still affected, and yet we're already on to the next news cycle. And I'm just like, what is going
Yeah,
on? I haven't even had time to grieve over this, or to what do I do?
right.
And then
I
next
haven't
thing
even
you know, it's like,
processed
bam,
this.
we're on to the next. And it's like, that is so hurting. It hurts spiritually. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
It's
And
like, how do we
it's
unify?
just
How do we unify?
right. But how
How
do
can we
you
come
not just
together?
unify with everybody, but with our own selves? Because it's like we're already on to the next thing, and it's just like, holy shit, I haven't even gotten over the last thing. And I'm just like, I'm exhausted. You know what I mean? And like,
Yeah.
everybody's exhausted, and then our tempers start flaring, and then so I have found myself having to make myself stop and pray and go open my meditation book back up and read through it, because I'm like, God darn it, I'm so sideways sometimes that I just have to make myself stop. And like, even at the gym today, I was
Yeah.
like almost in tears when I walked in there, just because of all these things. Like, and we have some personal stuff in our lives going on because of these communist cocksuckers. Excuse me, Lord, again. I do have a potty mouth, and I ask God for forgiveness like every 5 minutes for that. But it is what it is. But I walked into the gym, and I was just so like a deer in headlights. And my coach is like, "Are you okay?" And I was just like, "Yeah, I just need a couple minutes," because I was gonna cry. I mean, I was
Mhm.
just so, and that's one of the reasons I go to the gym, is because it's a great stress reliever. And
Absolutely.
this sounds really odd, but it's like one of my happy places. I go in there and I get to throw
Not
weights,
odd at all.
and
Not odd at
yeah,
all.
I get to beat the shit out of a slam ball, and
Hell yeah.
burpees suck, but when you do a gazillion of them in a wad, I'm telling you, you don't get much of a better feeling by the time
That's
you're done.
coping. That's
Yeah,
coping
and by
right
the
there,
time,
sister. That's
yeah,
coping.
and I had to, but I was gonna cry. Like, I had to go to the bathroom and sit there for a couple minutes and just like, and then I walked back out and I'm like, all right, let's do this. And by the time I left, I was in a totally different place. And during the whole workout, I'm just like, of course, I'm counting my reps, but I'm praying because I'm talking
Absolutely.
to God. That's my space to leave everything behind and just do my thing and talk to God, and sort of being alone, even though I'm not alone. You know what I'm saying?
No,
And
absolutely.
so
I know
it's good
exactly what
for
you
the
mean. Like
soul.
when I go into the sauna at the gym, I will put on normally some type of worship music. Uh, I'll just go and relax, unwind, think,
Right.
things like that while I'm in
Yeah.
there. Even though if
Yeah.
there are other people in there, I'm just in there just listening and,
Hmm.
connecting and,
Yeah.
things like that. And, just trying to, meditate,
Yeah.
get out of
We
the noise.
have to.
Because it's quiet in
We
there, it's
have to.
hot, there's no distractions,
Yeah.
it's so nice. Like,
Hmm.
I don't ever take my phone into the sauna. And so,
Right. Well, it's
no
just like I
distractions or
feel
anything.
like we're
So,
being crushed from every angle. And I think the
absolutely.
majority of it is done purposefully. And this is exactly
Yeah,
what they're trying to
90%.
do. Yeah. And this is exactly
Hmm.
what they're trying to do. And the further they can get people away from God, the further they can crush our souls, the more they have control. And
Hmm.
and I'm like, I refuse. And every time I get really sideways about the politics, or about whatever I'm seeing on news, or how just fucked up everything is, you know what, I just sit there and remind myself that nobody has power over me except my Most High. Nobody.
Yeah.
They could come and raid my house and say, that's enough. You're going to the gulag, and I'll just be like, hey, because you
Hey,
don't have any
well,
power over
if
me.
Kamala gets elected, you and I are both getting raided pretty hard. Apparently, according to what she said, her rhetoric.
We're all getting raided. I'm like, yeah, I have some awesome friends. You, Aaron,
Yeah,
Brandon. I'm like, we all
Ju-
going down, but
jail's gonna be
yeah, the
pretty fun
gulags,
cool.
the
Jail's gonna be
gulag's
pretty
gonna be
fun cool,
lit, honey. Gulag's gonna be
bro.
lit.
I'm telling you, it's gonna be a good time. We're gonna have
Yeah,
so much fun. Like if that does happen, like that's gonna backfire. It's like hell yeah, this
we're
is
gonna be like,
great.
let's go,
Three
let's go. They're like, you're supposed to be not having fun. We're like, because like I
three
said,
hots in a cot. Let's
I'm not
go.
giving these people power over me, man. You do not
No,
own me. You don't own anybody, as a matter of fact. And your day will come, because as far as I'm concerned, God will not be mocked. And these people have done nothing but mock him by
yeah,
every action that they take. And, on a daily basis. And I'm like, you are so in your own little beds there. And I'm not perfect by any means, but at least I know my truth. And so I can live with myself on a daily basis. But those people,
yeah.
I just want to
And
live long enough to see one of them, just one of them, the big players go down, and then I'll be all right. I'm like,
I mean, let's end talking about a conspiracy, and a conspiracy that's not so conspiracy right now, right? So
okay,
Tony
which
Hinchcliffe
one?
made a very appropriate joke. It's probably his best joke of that, right? Everyone that keeps coming out and endorsing the left,
Which
starting to look
one?
more and more
Which
like,
one?
Hinchcliffe's joke where he said that, all these celebrities that
About the island?
keep coming out. No, not that one.
Okay.
His other joke about how the endorsement of the Democratic Party keep looking more like a list of a Diddy party. And
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
there's images of Kamala and Diddy, her in a
Mm-hmm.
real low cut shirt, real low cut, everything's hanging out damn near.
Mm-hmm.
And these things looking more and more like a Diddy party. Usher,
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
Usher, Beyonce, and
Yeah.
Lizzo, and all these
Yeah.
athletes and
Well,
celebrities coming out endorsing the left. And who's
I
coming out
know.
endorsing the right though? You have Dr. Phil, you have Undertaker,
Yeah.
Kane,
Mm-hmm.
Dana
I
White,
mean, Tulsi
you know,
Gabbard. I mean, come on.
Gabbard,
You have all the,
RFK.
yeah. And these are real patriotic people. These are
Absolutely.
people who, you know, to come from where they were to where they are now. It's like, yeah, you got to
Even
mess up
JD
pretty
Vance.
bad.
Even JD Vance,
I know.
his vice
Anyways,
president.
yeah, see, yeah, and I mean, I have a lot of conspiracy theories on all that too, but it is good to see. It's good to see the little powerhouse going on, because that does bring you some hope, and we need
I
a
mean,
lot of that right now.
it sets up for a hell of a potential for if Trump wins. It sets up a hell of a potential for 12 years of just 12 plus years of really good, strong Republican leadership. Because if it's Trump for the next 4 years, and then essentially you think, oh, well, it's J.D. Vance and Gabbard on the next ticket.
Vance, yeah, yeah,
It's Vance Gabbard
yeah.
next ticket. And then after that,
Mhm.
if that's an 8-year
Trump
run,
Jr.
and then it's Gabbard and Trump Jr. or Eric Trump after that,
Right.
maybe. The Trump,
Yeah.
Gabbard has the politics side, Trump has the name, and then we're looking at 12 goes to 20 years.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
who
and
knows?
that's the thing, is what the left needs to realize is that if their policies were not so freaking hardcore and so socialist and communistic, it's like we could get along, but I'm not
Oh, it would
going
be great.
to. I am not. I'm just not going to get along with that. And I have to be truthful about that. And it's not that I don't, as a person, love you, but I am not going to live that way. I'm
Yeah.
not going to live under a communist regime. I just, I'm not doing it,
No.
and I know pretty much everybody I know is not doing it either. And so, I'm like, good luck with that, because that's we're not going to do that. I've I don't know. I don't want to say too much, because we probably will be on that list.
Oh, that's fine. I'm 1000% sure I'm already on it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I put out after this episode comes out, it'll be 8 episodes of this, and I've gained more followers than I lost, which is great.
Right.
But a true sign of a fascist is accusing other people of what you're doing, right?
Oh my gosh, they're good
How
at
often
that,
does that
aren't
happen?
they? My God, they're good at that.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
it's
so
so
good at it,
disgusting. I
right?
know. And it's so funny, because I actually don't know anybody. I know maybe 2 or 3 people in my life who think that he was terrible or whatever, but it's actually only my family, who really believes in her. Isn't that weird? I'm such a black sheep. They're just like, how can you think that? And I'm like,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know.
no, I stand out definitely. Like here in Washington, like I stand out. I
Oh,
feel like I stand out.
yeah.
You know, I stand out
Yeah.
hard. But there's a lot more red around than you think.
I
You get
know.
like you look at California. California could flip. New York could
Mm.
flip.
My daughter-in-law lived in Huntington Beach. Well, and Huntington Beach is pretty conservative, though.
Yeah.
All those little surfer dudes. They're all pretty conservative. But
Mhm.
where she lived, though, she's like, there's not a lot of liberals around here. That's kind of LA,
It's
and
LA, San Francisco, and that's kind of it. Everywhere else in between
yeah,
is
yeah,
fairly conservative, save for
yeah,
Washington State here. It's mostly Seattle
yeah,
and the outskirts. After that, like
yeah,
it's very, very conservative outside of that. Same for Oregon. You look at Oregon, it's Portland and the surrounding areas within an
right,
hour and a half Portland, and then the rest
right,
very conservative. And there's a lot more people that have moved out to
yeah,
those areas.
yeah. And Colorado too. All my friends that live down there, they're all conservatives. I don't know any liberals that live down there, even though I
Yeah,
know that there's pockets of
we're
it.
going to see,
But
we're 1 week away from the election, as it is, and this will come out post-election or maybe before the election. We'll see, depending on how I want to number things and push things out. But,
right,
you know, Karl Marx once said, accuse your enemy of doing what you are
hmm,
doing as you are doing it to create confusion.
yeah, yeah,
Karl Marx,
yeah.
another move forward into a future unburdened by what has been. Karl
Oh
Marx,
God,
Kamala's favorite saying, unburdened by what has been. Her stepfather, her father, whatever,
yeah,
whoever, Marxist professor, UC Berkeley.
yes,
She never was raised in a middle class family. It's much
no. And
um,
that's
you
it's
know,
funny, because I was going to say that to you. I was going to say that to you, that I had heard that was in the Communist Manifesto or whatever, the
it
Marxist
was. Yep,
Manifesto of let's
it
be
was.
unburdened by what has been. All, as a matter
Yeah,
of fact, a lot of her sayings are,
a
and
lot,
that, like, the
a
joy saying that
lot.
she says, that as well was
Yep,
in the in the, I guess the Nazis used to say that as well.
they
And
did.
it's remarkable that people don't do the research. They just
Yeah,
take for what they've heard and just take it as gospel. And I'm like, if
just
you
not Trump.
guys,
Woke mind disease, Trump dangerous syndrome, and crazy too. This other thing, that's really important
yeah,
to talk about. DoD Directive 5240.01,
oh
which gives
God,
the Pentagon power for the first time in history to use lethal force to kill Americans on U.S. soil who protest government policy. Literally
mm.
Hitler. Literally Hitler. They're
Do you
accusing
want
Trump
to
of
know my
being
take
Hitler.
on that?
Of course.
I think that's why January 6th was set up,
It
because
was. It was
when
set
people
up by
kick off
Pelosi.
when people kick off about the election, if they manage to steal it, which I'm praying that it's just such a blowout that they can't possibly,
Yeah,
but
too
if
big to
they
rig.
did, and then people go to protest and kick off about it, they're going to have that directive and say, look, see, it's another January 6th. And I think that's
Shoot
why
on
they
sight.
brought that about. And that terrifies me, because we have a right to protest, and I'm not talking about, armed guns firing. I'm talking about peaceful protest. We have every right to say we don't believe this was a fair election.
And
And
the biggest thing that should be questioned in all of it is Kamala wasn't elected. She didn't win a single primary. She has never won a primary. Zero vote. You guys people are out there voting for someone who's never gotten a single vote in her entire life.
How did they get away with that?
The vice president is appointed. The
How
vice
did they
president
get
is
away with
appointed.
that?
They shouldn't have. It was insanity.
I know.
The first candidate to be entirely created by the media. No record of accomplishment. Nobody voted for her. She got destroyed by Tulsi Gabbard in, 2016 or 2020 in the primaries? Absolutely destroyed. Never won a primary vote.
I have no idea to this day how
just a few months ago,
managed.
Her popularity was in the toilet.
I know.
Months ago.
We're in the freaking twilight zone, dude. I'm telling you, we're in the twilight zone.
I don't get it. I'm sure we can look up something in Revelation that says something about this. Fake politics, fake politicians, all these things, and
and that's where I have to, like I was saying a minute ago, like I have to stay out of that fear. I have to stay away from fear because fear is is all consuming, and it can destroy just about every part of your life, from self-esteem to self-doubt to, just, this, we're doomed, we're going to die. Oh my God. And it's like, I have to stay away from that, because if you look at the big picture, it's just terrifying. It's just absolutely terrifying. And so that's when I have to step back and say, these people don't have power over me. Only our one and true has power over us, and as long as he's still in charge, we're good. As long as he's still at the helm of the ship, then we're okay. No matter what goes down, no matter what happens, we're gonna be okay.
We'll be all right.
And I have to remember that all the time, because otherwise, it'll buckle your knees when you start to realize the level of deception and the level of corruption that's going on right now in this not just this country but the world. It's
they act like it's normal, and it should be normal,
but
and
the child thing, it's just all so, it's just so heartbreaking. It's just, you can't even comprehend the level of depravity that we've sunk to as a nation and globally. And so that's why I'm like, all right, God, I'm going to trust that you know what's going on, that you've got us. And no matter what happens, we're going to make it through one way or another,
Yeah. And, I'll end us on this. I think we mentioned Tony Hinchcliffe a lot during this podcast recording, but I think it was right, when he mentioned God made his choice 3 months ago when Trump missed by mere millimeters the assassination attempt. And then again, he made another choice with another assassination attempt at his golf course. Coincidence. It doesn't happen. Things don't happen like that. Don't happen twice. They don't happen twice. That's beyond Trump. Trump's not God. But obviously there's a reason. There's a big, fat reason that Trump's still alive. The big, fat reason, there's a reason why that chart went up right when he went up. Why that chart went up right when it went up, and why when he turned his head. There's a reason. There's an absolute reason why that shot missed. It wasn't just because of for a staged event. It's God. I truly believe that was God. Wishing violence on your political opponents is absolute malarkey and unacceptable. Wishing death on a political opponent, whether you like him or not, unacceptable. You shouldn't wish it on any human being. And so I'll leave it there. But as long as God's in your forefront, as long as God's in front of yourself as a family and your leadership and exactly what you're doing day to day, then you're gonna be all right. People around you are gonna be all right. Your family's gonna be all right. So
and we have to remember that all the time. And and I have a lot of friends that ask me, what the heck can we do? Like, what can we do? I feel so useless. I feel so small. And I say, well, you pray. That's it. You just pray, because it only takes 1% of the population praying to change everything, because prayer changes everything. It is a game changer. And, you don't get more powerful than a people praying. And so I think that that's the biggest difference, besides everybody going out to vote and just smashing the records, is pray. And don't cease. Don't cease.
Yeah.
Let's keep going until we get the home run and get everybody safe and not suffering like what we are.
Absolutely. And that's something I encourage. I was just going around at work today. I had to ask my HR department at work because I work in a mental health office. And I was unsure. First time working there with an election. I had to ask my HR. I'm like, so what's allowed with this? Because I'm very passionate.
Right.
Something I feel very strongly about, that everyone in our agency should go out and vote. She's like, well, we can't endorse anyone. We can't endorse voting or anything like that. Can't take a stand. But he said, but you are more than welcome to go around and verbally encourage other people to vote. So that's what I'm doing. I'm encouraging people to vote verbally, making sure it's very clear. This is me verbally encouraging you to go vote. Elections in a week. Go and vote. I'm not going to get in trouble because I'm telling you I'm verbally encouraging you to vote.
Right.
I don't care who you vote for. I don't want to know who you vote for. I don't care nothing about that. I just want you to vote. I put it in my fantasy basketball leagues. I put it in my fantasy football leagues. I put it in group chats with friends and whatnot. I said, hey guys, election's a week away. Go vote.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies, he was like, I've gotten so many calls and texts about voting, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I don't care. Go vote. Pray and vote. Pray and vote.
And so can I give my friend a shout out then?
Absolutely. And then we'll get out of here.
Okay, absolutely. So for any of your friends watching, if you go on Instagram, there's 2 accounts I want you to go to. One is Erin Loves America, not mine. It's AARON.
My man, Erin.
You can go to mine too. I would be grateful.
First episode of Patriarchy Principles. My man, Erin.
Did you really?
My very first episode of the show, Erin Love. Yep.
He's so amazing. Oh my God, they are true patriots. Those Erin Loves America with AARON Loves America, and it's Erin _loves _America. And go follow him because he will help you, tell you how to get your friends and go vote. Okay, and then you can follow Vote for America. I believe it's .org. I'm not 100%, but Vote for America. And then my friend Brandon with I Came with Fire podcast on Instagram. They are filled with ways for you to get your friends to register and go and vote. Okay, so please go give them a follow so that if you still need to do whatever you have to do to get out there and vote, you can go do that because it is important, you guys. This is there's a lot at stake here, and we need to get our country back. We need to get our freedoms back, and we need to get God back in our homes. So please go give them a follow.
In our homes, in our hearts.
Oh gosh, yeah, we absolutely need
in our
to.
Homes, in our hearts, in our minds.
But we have a duty as Americans to get out there and make our voices heard. So please go to Vote for America and follow Erin Loves America and I Came with Fire podcast, and of course the wonderful host of the Patriarchy. I could never say that word right.
Patriarchy Principles. No, I love it. And it's all under the Young Dad Pop.
He's amazing.
Moniker. So I appreciate you, Erin. Well, Erin, thank you so much for sharing your insights, experiences with me today, your facts, opinions, all the things that, just the overall thought-provoking conversation that we had today. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
We ran a bit long, but that's okay. We were having a good time along the way. So I'm glad we got to ramble and go back and forth and, exchange thoughts and opinions. And I really think this is going to resonate with a lot of our listeners. A lot of people need to hear these messages, need to hear hard truth. If I was to recommend a podcast for you or for anyone else, I would highly recommend going and checking out Vivek. I have no affiliation with Vivek Ramaswamy whatsoever, but I love his podcast, Truth, with Vivek Ramaswamy. It's absolutely incredible. So I highly recommend that podcast if you haven't listened to it yet. Go and listen to Vivek Ramaswamy. He breaks it down. Just an incredible dude. Apparently he's too brown for the White House, but I think that'll change in either 2028 or 2032.
Yeah.
For those interested in hearing more from Erin, make sure to go check out, her podcast that she hosts, Patriot Paranormal. I'll include the links in the show notes, of course, which you can find over on the website at youngdadpod.com, as well as full transcript, show notes of the episode as well. So thank you guys all for tuning in. I'm going to go rest my voice because it's disappearing. Into Patriarchy Principles. Until next time, keep questioning, stay informed, and lead your families with courage and conviction.